You think Harvard or the Kennedys run Massachusetts, right? Well, let me tell you the truth. This state is actually run by a handful of families you probably haven't heard of, and they're sitting on tens of billions while doing it. You're about to see a daughter who staged a full boardroom coup against her own father and walked away with $500 million. But that's nothing next to a man who lost $1 billion overnight and launched his next company before the year was even over. And at number 1? A family so rich they packed up and moved across a state line just to dodge the tax bill. Let's get into it. Number 8. The Redstone Dynasty. Picture a man dangling out of a burning hotel window, holding on by his fingertips, waiting for rescue. He survived. That was Sumner Redstone, and honestly, hanging off a ledge by his fingernails is the perfect image for how this entire family operated. The Redstones built their fortune on a movie theater chain out of Norwood, Massachusetts, called National Amusements. Boring name, not a boring company, because that little theater business was the holding vehicle that controlled Viacom, CBS, and eventually Paramount Global. At the peak, this family had their hands on one of the biggest media empires on the planet. And Sumner ran it like a man who'd already survived a fire, feared, tenacious, and completely unwilling to let go. Here's where it turns. As Sumner got older and his health started slipping, control of the whole empire was suddenly up for grabs. Enter his daughter, Sherry. She'd spent years being sidelined, underestimated, publicly feuded with by her own father. So in 2016, she made her move, a full-scale boardroom coup. She took on Viacom's CEO. She fought a brutal succession war in the courts, in the press, at boardroom tables she'd spent years being shut out of, and she won all of it. By 2019, she'd merged CBS and Viacom under her control alone. Then came the exit. In 2025, Sherry sold National Amusements to Skydance Media for a reported $2.4 billion. Her personal cut? Somewhere north of $530 million. Severance, her stake, a pension payout, the whole package. $500 million for a company she spent most of her adult life clawing her way to the top of. Victory, sure, but also the most expensive family therapy bill in American media history. And she's not done either. Tufts, then Boston University Law School, and after the Paramount exit, she took over as chair of an Israeli documentary studio. The woman who fought 2 decades for the empire barely paused before starting the next chapter. Sherry fought her whole life to be seen, so it's almost funny that the next name on this list built a bigger fortune, making absolutely certain you'd never know he exists. Number 7. The Reagan Dynasty. You've used this man's software, guaranteed. At a hospital, a bank, a government office, some system running quietly in the background was built by Terry Reagan, and you have no idea who he is. That's not an accident. That's the entire plan. Reagan is an MIT physics grad who started InterSystems in Cambridge back in 1978. What does it do? It's the plumbing for the world's health data, the database infrastructure running inside major hospital networks, the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, banks, and government agencies across 80 countries. And here's the part that makes him different from basically everyone else on this list. In over 40 years, he never took a dollar of outside money, never went public, never answered to a single shareholder. 100% his. Annual revenue sits around $1 billion. His personal net worth is estimated somewhere between 3.3 and 4.2 billion. And still, nobody outside Cambridge could pick him out of a lineup. But the money's almost the boring part. In 2009, Terry and his wife Susan went to South Africa, saw the HIV epidemic up close, and came home changed. So they built the Reagan Institute, a research collaboration between Mass General, MIT, and Harvard, starting with a $100 million pledge. Then in 2019, they dropped another $200 million on Mass General, the largest single gift in that hospital's entire history, earmarked for one thing: a vaccine for HIV and tuberculosis. They signed the Giving Pledge. They funded a 300,000 square foot research HQ in Kendall Square. No galas, no magazine covers, no press releases. Just a physics nerd who quietly decided that trying to cure AIDS was a better use of a fortune than a bigger yacht. Reagan spent 40 years making sure nobody ever noticed him. The next family had the exact opposite problem. because their fights got so loud that an entire region shut down its own grocery stores in protest. Number 6. The Dynasty. Imagine a supermarket where the cashiers, the truck drivers, the guys stocking the shelves, all of them, walk off the job. No union telling them to, no contract forcing them. They just refuse to work, and they shut the whole chain down because of a family argument happening in a boardroom above their heads. That actually happened. In Massachusetts. Let me back up. Speaking of a family business that could inspire that kind of loyalty, there's a program someone on our team has been curious about called the Billionaire Brain Wave. It's a simple 7-minute audio built around theta brainwave research, the deep focus brain state linked to where big creative ideas come from. You put on headphones once a day, usually with your morning coffee, and that's the whole routine. It's a one-time $39. It comes with bonus guides on money habits and investing basics, and there's a 90-day money-back guarantee. So testing it costs you nothing if it's not for you. If you're watching on your TV, pause and scan the QR code on screen with your phone camera or tap the first link in the description. Now, back to how this whole grocery saga began. It starts in 1917 when Greek immigrants opened a tiny market in Lowell. Their sons, Mike and George, bought the business in 1954 for $15,000 and turned it into Market Basket, a New England institution with over 90 stores pulling in more than $7.3 billion a year. Combined family net worth lands somewhere between $3 and $4.6 billion. Great immigrant success story. And then George died in 1971, and the success story becomes a 50-year war. After George's death, his brother Mike allegedly started quietly moving assets out of the shared company and into entities his side of the family controlled. George's heirs sued. The trial ran 84 days. The court ruled Mike had defrauded them and handed George's family more than half the company plus $206 million in diverted dividends. And that didn't end it. It just passed the feud to the next generation. Mike's son, Arthur T. versus George's son, Arthur S. Two cousins. Same name, same grandfather's supermarket. Total war. In 2014, the board fired Arthur T. as CEO, and that's when the impossible happened. The workers revolted. Shelves went bare. Suppliers bailed. The chain ground to a halt for weeks, not over pay, but over which Arthur they wanted running the place. Arthur T. eventually bought his cousin's controlling stake for a reported $1.5 billion, financed partly by Blackstone, and walked back into a hero's welcome. Shelves refilled overnight. Decades of lawsuits, and the fighting reportedly still isn't fully over. But the shelves? Still full. Now, the Demoulas family fought loudly and in public. The next man figured out something sneakier, that if you own the team and the newspaper covering the team, you basically get to write your own reviews. Number 5. The Henry Dynasty. Quick question. What do you do when you own a baseball team and you're worried about what the local paper writes about it? Easy. You buy the paper. That's not a hypothetical. That's Tuesday for John Henry. Henry runs Fenway Sports Group, which controls the Boston Red Sox, Liverpool Football Club, the Pittsburgh Penguins, and a NASCAR team. He also owns NESN, the network that broadcasts his teams. And in 2013, he bought the Boston Globe from the New York Times Company for $70 million. Cash. His estimated net worth is around $5.7 billion. So in Massachusetts, you basically root for his teams or read his paper, usually both. He's built the most self-contained sports media machine in the state, and the loop is airtight. His teams get covered by his paper and broadcast on his network. Now let's talk about how a man like this lives. In 2022, Henry bought Harbor Hill House in Nantucket for a reported $37 million, the biggest home sale in the island's history. Over 18,000 square feet, 10 bedrooms, 15 bathrooms, private beachfront. And when Nantucket gets boring, the family reportedly cruises on a custom 253-foot super yacht called Elysian. 20 crew, room for 14 guests, and a price tag somewhere around $90 million. $90 million. On a boat you have to keep refueling. His wife, Linda Pizzuti Henry, is an MIT grad who now runs Boston Globe Media as CEO, The Globe, Boston.com, Stat News, while holding a partner stake in Fenway Sports Group. She's one of the most powerful media executives in New England. Full stop. The thing to sit with here is the machine. The teams, the network, the paper, the ballpark, the real estate around it, all feeding each other. Most dynasties spend generations building that kind of closed loop. Henry did it in about 10 years. Henry owns the stories Massachusetts tells about itself. But there's a man on this list who went one level lower. He owns the actual buildings those stories get made inside. And he'd genuinely prefer you never noticed him at all. Number 4. The Davis Dynasty. On the morning of the Boston Marathon in 1972, a guy paid $100,000 for a struggling little shoe company. 6 employees. 30 pairs of shoes a day out of a Boston garage. Everyone else looked at it and saw nothing. Jim Davis looked at it and saw the next 50 years. That company was New Balance. Today, the family holds a 95% private stake in a business with 4,000 employees and over $5 billion in annual revenue. Net worth estimated between $5.2 and $6.5 billion. No venture rounds. No IPO. No earnings calls. No analyst downgrades. Nobody to answer to. When you own 95% of something that just keeps growing for half a century, the math does all the talking. And the family's footprint is literally built into Boston. Boston Landing, a reported $500 million development in Brighton finished in 2015, houses New Balance's global HQ and the practice facilities for both the Celtics and the Bruins. Read that again. The Davis family built the buildings where Boston's 2 most beloved franchises train every single day. And they own those buildings. That's the kind of move that reshapes a city's map permanently. And it barely made a headline. Jim's personal style is aggressively boring, and that's the point. He dodges the press. He declines profiles. What he does do is quietly collect and restore rare performance cars in a private Massachusetts facility almost nobody ever sees. In 2025, a local college auctioned off VIP access to the collection for charity. And that basically counts as him making a public appearance. Perfectly on brand for a man whose entire career has been built on staying invisible and letting the results do the shouting. Here's the thing about Davis. He never lost. Never gave up a piece, never let anyone in, just compounded quietly for 50 years. Which makes the next guy his exact mirror image. Because he watched $1 billion evaporate in a single afternoon. Number 3. The Hale Dynasty. $1 billion, gone. In 2002, Robert Hale's telecom company Network Plus went bankrupt and took about $1 billion down with it, basically overnight. Most people need years just to recover from something like that. Hale needed about 0. He founded his next company, Granite Telecommunications, the same year. Same year. He watched $1 billion vanish and started over before the calendar flipped. Granite is now a privately held telecom giant in Quincy, pulling in a reported $1.85 billion a year, serving more than 2/3 of the top 100 U.S. corporations. Alongside it, his firm Fox Rock Properties manages over 5 million square feet of commercial and medical real estate across New England. Family net worth, an estimated $6 billion. He also holds a minority stake in the Boston Celtics. Because of course he does. The comeback isn't part of the story. The comeback is the story. But how the Hales give money away is what makes them unforgettable. In 2025, they donated $100 million to Boston Children's Hospital, the biggest gift in that hospital's history. That's the big one. The signature move is smaller and stranger. Hale shows up at public state schools, UMass Dartmouth, Bridgewater State, not Harvard, walks up to every single graduating senior and hands them 2 envelopes, $500 each. The instruction: keep one, give the other away to someone who needs it. He's turning hundreds of broke 22-year-olds into participants in his own philanthropy, 1 envelope at a time. And at his annual cancer fundraiser, he shaved his own head on stage, in front of a packed room, standing next to the governor of Massachusetts. A $6 billion man, bald, on a stage, for charity. Robert Hale has an energy that money genuinely cannot buy. Hale gives his fortune away $500 at a time, in envelopes, to strangers. The next family gives theirs away too. But first they had to build something you have personally rooted for, or screamed at your TV about. Number 2. The Kraft Dynasty. Everybody thinks the Kraft money is football money. It isn't. The foundation of this entire fortune is paper. Boring, industrial, cardboard box paper. The Kraft Group controls Rand Whitney and International Forest Products, packaging and supply chain operations across New England. And that is the cash engine underneath everything else. The Patriots sit on top of the pyramid. They are not the base of it. Robert Kraft bought the Patriots in 1994 for $172 million, back when the franchise was a mess. He built it through 6 Super Bowls into a global brand valued around $9 billion by 2025. Then he built Patriot Place, the retail and entertainment district wrapped around Gillette Stadium in Foxborough that basically runs like its own private town. Combined family net worth: a reported $13.8 billion. His son Jonathan runs the group's day-to-day, having grown up watching the whole thing get built from nothing. And then there's Robert's personal life, which he has never made easy to ignore. His first wife, Myra, passed away in 2011, and Boston genuinely grieved with him. Then in October 2022, at 81, Kraft married Dr. Dana Blumberg, a Columbia ophthalmologist, in a surprise Manhattan wedding where guests thought they were showing up to a kickoff and touchdown party. Then Elton John performed, and Ed Sheeran and Meek Mill. Tom Brady was there, Bon Jovi, Kenny Chesney, the whole room. And there was enough real joy in it that most people forgot to be cynical. His giving runs deep too, $100 million to Mass General, and in the most specifically Robert Kraft gesture imaginable, real funding for the Boston Police Department's Mounted Horse Unit. The man contains multitudes. Now, $13.8 billion. Sounds untouchable, right? Here's the thing you need to understand before we get to number 1. The jump from number 2 to number 1 on this list is bigger than every other family on it, combined. Number 1, the Johnson Dynasty, $7.1 trillion. That's how much money the family at number 1 manages. Trillion, with a T. At that point, the number stops being a number and starts being a concept your brain can't fully hold. The Johnsons control FMR Corp., the parent of Fidelity Investments, through a roughly 49% family stake, with the other 51% held by Fidelity's own employees. The combined family fortune sits at an estimated $69.5 billion, split across 3 siblings. Abigail Johnson, the chairman and CEO, worth an estimated $30 to $35 billion. Her brother Edward IV, who runs the family's real estate arm, around $14 billion. And their sister Elizabeth, around $12 billion. 3 siblings, nearly $70 billion, out of one private firm in downtown Boston. And that word, private, is the whole secret. By keeping FMR out of the public markets, the Johnsons have permanently walled themselves off from hostile takeovers, activist investors, and the 90-day earnings panic that runs every public company. They can make 50-year decisions while competitors sweat the next quarter. That advantage has been compounding since 1946. And to protect the fortune even further, the family quietly moved their private wealth office out of Boston and across the border into Salem, New Hampshire, for the friendlier trust laws and the 0% income tax. A $70 billion family stepped over a state line to save on taxes. Not a scandal. Just what you do at this altitude. Abigail took over as CEO in 2014 and made one of the boldest bets in modern finance. While every conservative competitor was still debating whether crypto was even real, she was quietly building the infrastructure to offer it. Fidelity Digital Assets launched in 2018. Their Bitcoin fund had reportedly gathered over $21 billion by 2025. She built the plumbing first and let the market walk into it. And here's a wild little twist inside the twist. The third sibling, Elizabeth, took her slice of one of the greatest fortunes in America and walked in a completely different direction. She keeps her legal address at 18 Louisburg Square in Beacon Hill, the single most exclusive historic block in Boston. And she runs an elite show jumping stable down in Wellington, Florida. Horses. She sits on the board of the U.S. Equestrian Team Foundation and has zero operational role at Fidelity. Same bloodline, same billions, totally different world. And the family's giving? Hundreds of millions to Harvard, to historic preservation, to the arts, with no press conferences and no names on buildings. Because when you manage $7 trillion, you don't need your name on the wall. Everyone already knows exactly whose money it is. So there you have it. 8 families. One state, but a similar pattern running through all of them. Almost none of them wanted you to see any of this. The real Massachusetts money isn't loud. It's private, it's patient, and it owns the buildings you're standing in. So which one got you? The grocery store uprising? The guy handing out envelopes of cash? Or the family that quietly ran across the New Hampshire line to dodge the taxman? Drop it in the comments. I want to hear it. And if you like going this deep on the ultra-wealthy, subscribe to Global Status because we drop a new one every week. Catch you in the next video.